And welcome to the NEK Voice. I'm not your host, Scott Wheeler. I'm your co-host, Todd Pronto, filling in for Scott, who's right here.
Well, you sound so much better than me. How come you don't fire me?
Well, I don't pay you very well.
Oh, that's right. You don't pay me a thing.
I don't pay you at all.
Yeah, I think my radio show, I've been doing that you hired me for nothing.
They still not paying you?
I still don't get paid anything. And
that's good.
I've been here, 6-7 years, and you still don't pay me anything.
Yeah, it's a tough business.
Right.
Well, just so y'all know, I'm not getting crap today either.
Yeah, he's not getting paid either.
Okay.
So
We're here with Wayne Warner again, talking about his new book, Backstage Nashville. We talked about last week, and we're talking about again this week. And we haven't talked a whole lot about the book yet. I mean, we've talked a little bit about growing up.
Which I'm so glad you read. It's been out 4 months, and you read it last week. So well.
I read it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I'm so glad that one of my best friends finally got around to reading it.
You know, I'd been meaning to read it. But
one of those.
You
all have friends like that.
I hadn't bought it yet, and then you finally delivered it to me.
Well, I finally decided to give you one. Yeah.
And I'm reading Howard Stern's brand new book, and I put Howard Stern's book down to read.
Yeah, because Howard
Wayne
Stern
Warner.
has been so good to you. I mean, you know.
And you got to remember, I have worked here for nothing for you, and have you read my latest book?
I have not read your latest
See,
book. I have it.
Behind Howard Stern too.
Now let's talk about this for a minute.
Whose show is this?
I just want to know.
Oh, it's Scott.
So we've got hosts 1, 2, and 3 here. Mm-hmm. So just so you know, I very seldom do shows, concerts, or anything. But if Todd calls me to do a show, have I ever said no to you?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
And if you
and how
call,
much do I pay
and if you call and you're having a problem with one of your girlfriends or anything, do I ever say I don't have time to talk?
No.
Okay. And if you ever want to come down to the pizza and have my house and have a pizza, vegetarian pizza, or coffee, do I ever say I'm not home?
I mean, if you're in Nashville, yes.
Well, yeah, but you know, but 4 months after my book comes out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
So I'm with you, Scott.
Yeah. I have figured out Todd's gimmick, anyways.
Yeah.
Todd is, a lot of these singer-songwriters, they like to plead poverty, but I've come to the conclusion Todd only works here for a hobby.
Yeah,
because his tour in the Northeast Kingdom and New England, because, if you notice, this is a true story, there is a jet that lands at the airport, and his name is Pronto.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Todd says that's his uncle's jet.
I
think it's mine, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that uncle, and I'm a huge fan of that man. In fact, I actually mentioned his name a few times in the book. But I just want to say one more thing about Todd, and then we'll talk about me in the book.
Okay, this is good.
But to the people who make out the checks here at this place, I stop in here once in a while when I'm in Newport, and I've never seen Todd work.
Well, I'm the director. I direct people to work.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, you know what? Here's the truth be told. When you love your job, it isn't really work. It is, and it isn't. But like with me, with my writing, and it's not work per se, but the business of writing kind of stinks. I like the writing, but the business part of it, which I think you have somebody who handles the business end of music, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because I'm not very good at right-brained stuff. I have to be on one side or the other.
I'm married to a genius, by the way.
Yeah.
And my wife happens, we're like polar opposite. I'm out here in La La Land doing my stuff. She's very concrete.
And that works.
Yeah, she's very concrete. She needs to take me and yank me out of the air and just remind me that.
Every artist needs someone like that for sure.
What about you, Todd? Do you have one of those?
My girlfriend is also an artist.
Right.
She's
Oh,
a
so
dancer.
she's flighty, too.
We're both kind
Yeah.
of. We're both kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's okay. My
Oh, and we were talking about relatives. You know how everybody's related? Todd has, I think, secretly worshipped me for years.
Not so secretly.
I say that. I actually say it tongue in cheek. So he decides to date somebody within my wife's family tree.
Oh, yeah.
So, just so he can be within. Maybe we can even go to the same family
Yeah.
reunions.
That's why we're not married yet.
Yeah.
Not Todd and I, but
Right.
Todd and Danielle.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Gotcha.
So anyway, the book. You talk about something, and this talks about artists too, that that I completely connect with, but I talked to somebody else who read the book that didn't connect with it, and when they asked me, I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." You talk about feeling like you fooled somebody or that you don't belong, like you're backstage at they used to call it Fanfare. What's it called now?
Right, yeah, CMA Fest.
Yeah. And you talk about, here I am going up on stage, and I think Billy Ray Cyrus was before you or
He
something.
actually opened for me that day.
And you're thinking, how did I trick all these people into thinking I should be here? And
I still feel that way sometimes.
well, I do too, and I completely identify with it. But somebody that was not an artist asked me about it. They said, well, how can, you've been on the radio, you've been on television, blah blah. You should feel like you belong there. But I think whenever you're doing something in the public eye, sometimes you think like, man, I tricked them.
Well,
like what am I doing
think
here?
it goes-
And I completely I identify
I think it
with
goes
that.
back to what Scott was saying. I just didn't feel worthy of it. I'm like, I was the kid that got bullied, at school. I was the kid that was alienated, and now these people, literally, security was holding them back from getting to me because I sang this song. It just seemed like, don't they know that I'm that same kid that didn't get picked, to play on the basketball team? I was the last kid. I always said not to be picked because I wasn't picked. I was the one left over.
Yeah.
Right.
And that poor team was the one that got stuck with me. And so, yeah, I always felt like, I'll share a story with you and the viewers, because I think there are people that will relate. And, that was really what this became about for me, Todd. And I hope the last chapter tells that. As I said, I didn't want to write this book. It was my sons that told me, Todd, you know this, and we won't get into this too much on here, but there are elements of this book that involve the current superstar of the day, and stories that we felt that maybe if I didn't tell it, somebody else would, and I wanted it to be told with integrity, and I wanted it to be done with protection of the artist, and anyway, so. My sons were saying, like, Dad, if you don't write that book, someone else is going to. And I said, no, I'm not writing any book, and neither will anyone else, because they're not going to. But anyway, they persisted. And one night they literally walked out of my house, and I sat down at the computer, and I still remember, I just started typing. I hate doing video shoots. I remember that line so well, because that was the first line of the book.
Yeah.
And I looked up 5 months later, and the book was done. It was just that simple. It just wrote itself. I just literally, so but it really became about if that story could be the Trojan horse to get to the other elements of the book, which for me are so important. One being addiction, my addiction, namely to alcohol. But I say that to say this. Sobriety and recovery, because to me that is such an epidemic, and so I wanted to include that in there. So I'm like Todd. I try to use the platform that we've been so blessed with, and I've seen Todd do it. He wrote about cancer. He writes about going after his dreams, and so he uses his gift to make it matter. I wasn't. This book would have never seen the light of day if I didn't have things in it that I thought could matter. And so I talked about those things, and I remember, in answering your question and taking the long way around to do it, I wasn't sober all that long, and obviously not long enough before. And it's a funny thing that happens, as you know, Todd. When you get sober, when you get clean and sober, things start to come together. For all of you, anybody out there who's struggling, believe me, it does. And I found myself embraced by the most legendary producer in Nashville, by the name of Harold Shedd. It talks about him in the book, and for those of you who have never heard of him, I would encourage you to look him up, because he's literally a legendary producer. And you've all heard of the people that he's brought to you, that he's discovered, and Alabama, Shania Twain, Billy Ray. And so now I'm his new boy. I'm his new discovery. And we are in a downtown studio. First time I'm working with this guy that I never dreamed I would even meet, let alone that he would want to produce some songs on me. And we're in the studio, and I'll never forget the song I was singing, because it bothers me to hear it to this day. It's called 10,000 Tears Ago. And he wanted his artist that he knew to come into the studio and hear his new boy. He called me his new boy. And so I'm in the vocal booth, Todd, and I look up through the window, and there's Billy Ray and Shania, and I believe it was Toby, and they're listening to me. and I absolutely lost my mind, because I literally thought, this doesn't, I don't belong here. I came from this little place in Vermont, and I just don't, I faked my way here. I just thought this isn't right. and we had to stop the session until I could get my act together. I hadn't been sober long enough to literally accept the fact, well, yeah, I did belong there. I've been singing on stage since I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And but I had to really give myself a pep talk and prepare myself for that that place I was at. Do you understand?
I do, yeah.
What I'm saying? And so I'm saying that to people out there who are on that journey, or who need to be on it, because that's what this is about. Yeah. And so thanks for that question. And I hope that answers that for that person who was questioning.
Well, it's a hard thing to explain, but I think anybody in any field that's successful, I think Steven Spielberg probably is just like, I fooled them all.
Oh, sure.
I made a movie with a bunch of models, not model people, like model cars.
And you know what's interesting too is back at home. So, I like to tell people, I wished it was the outsiders that were our worst critics, but sometimes it's right back at home that some of those people you may have been dealing with when you were younger are still the ones. It's like, for example, I'm proud to say my Newport history book that I wrote last year, I now use this as a badge of honor. Because I write history, but I write history. I don't do promo material, and so I now have my Newport history book. I'll hold it up when I do a talk. I said, this book is so good, half of the Newport leaders will no longer talk to me.
Oh, wow!
And I look at that as a badge of honor, is because they in their minds they thought, oh. This is all about us. Oh. No, I write about the people,
right,
and not about them. And so, how do you get, like? Are you still just Wayne Warner, that kid who grew up in the dance hall back here, or are you Wayne Warner, the Nashville star?
Well, my neighbors, my Vermont neighbors, people here, are what really, kept me sane during that whole Nashville, for me, that blow up with the song and the success that I had, because they kept me grounded. They were amazing. Now, there were people outside of my immediate area who weren't used to seeing me out around. That, yeah, I had that fan thing, that was going on, that wanted you get that, Todd, I'm sure, they want the pictures and the autographs, which on the home front always bothered me, because, I was home and I felt like I didn't have to be on. Yeah. But no, this community, allowed me to, and I'm sure you both will understand this. I mean, I messed up so many times developing, I've seen videos of me, on stage. I mean, I had a chance to develop here, you know what I mean? To develop that art and that sound and my writing chops. I grew up in front of these people, literally on stage in my dad's band. And they were there. They let me do that. And no, I mean, this community watched WW, that guy, go through all those changes and developments and things that I was struggling with. And I'm sure they were as confused as I was by some of that. And I'm not going to say there weren't some pointing and laughing going on behind my back. And I'm not going to say that I wasn't doing some of that myself. Because, look, I understand, and I'm so grateful that I got a chance to take, Todd and I both, we got a chance to take Vermont and represent Vermont and a place where few other people have, in that arena. And so, of course, we were misunderstood there, and in some ways misunderstood here. Right. I mean, when we say in Nashville, we're from Vermont, I've had people ask me, what state is that in? And that's Backstage at the Opry, So, I mean, I'll never forget one of the first times I actually had made it to a point of success. And this is getting a little bit personal, but this will, and Todd will understand this, where I had made it to a level of success where now I'm invited backstage at the Opry to hang out with, I don't know who was singing that night, but I'm invited backstage. This is big time, because the one time that I was at the Opry before that, I was sitting way up there. I mean, I could barely see where I had sat, and now I'm backstage. I'm in the dressing rooms hanging with everybody. And I was wearing a Manuel jacket. Those who are interested, look that up. It's a showbiz type jacket. And so I think it was Dwight Yoakam who thought that I was going to perform. And he said to me, this guy from Vermont, before you go on, my makeup artist is available. You better get in the makeup room. And I'm thinking, what is he, what is he talking about? You know where I'm going with this. And so that was my first introduction to the type of heavy makeup that we as males had to learn how to wear. And so then I get off, and I was basically kind of laughed at because I was the only one backstage that didn't have it. Now, a year later, I step off my tour bus in Morrisville, Vermont to run into the store because I just got off an interview somewhere, and everybody's saying, that guy's got makeup on. So it was like, that's what I mean about being from Vermont and Nashville, in that place of where, where do you fit in and so yeah, but accepted. Yeah, people still, they went for that ride with me. And so I always try to remember now, make sure that makeup's off before I, hit the Walmart in Burlington. But sometimes, it doesn't happen. But anyway, it's just
But it's Walmart.
It's part of our life. It's part of our life, isn't it?
Well, I mean, a little bit. I think folk music's a little bit different because there are a lot smaller venues. And
Well,
like seven people.
Well, folk singers look good anyway. You know, they don't need all that fancy get-up.
See, when you're a writer, you hide behind words. That's a better deal because my forehead would take way too much makeup to take off the glow. Hey, what's your favorite? This is might be a hard question. What's your favorite song you've ever written?
Yeah, no, that's like asking who your favorite kid is.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say something like that.
I mean, there are certainly favorite songs for different reasons.
Right.
For me, my Everest of my career will always be the God Bless the Children project. Obviously, because of what it did for a cause that I have so much passion for, which is adoption. Why? Because I'm the dad of two amazing, adopted kids. And the only reason I say the word adopted is to magnify the cause. To me, they're my sons. I only mention the word adoption to bring awareness to the fact that there are so many kids out there who need to be adopted, and what a beautiful thing that it is. But they're my sons, so I don't always bring in the word adopted. That word's not important to me, other than the fact that when I'm in a platform like this, I like to talk about it to bring awareness to the cause. And so God Bless the Children was just a great project because it brought in so many artists that represented. They came from, I think we had probably 30 or 40 artists, Todd, that came to join me on that song.
Yeah.
And this is what I like about it. Country music that day, and by the way, they're not the only genre that does this kind of stuff, but country music that day, and by the way, you don't see a lot of united choirs like that in country music, do you?
No.
But that day, they all came together for like a 9-hour shoot for nothing other than the fact that they wanted to bring their voice to this cause. And what I'm trying to get at is country music that day represented our country by how our country is, uniting for a cause. They gave a voice representing who we are as a nation. They all stepped off their tour buses, all of them busy people. These were literally legends in country music. Elvis Presley's Jordanaires sang right directly behind me on my song that I wrote. The Kentucky Headhunters, Taylor Swift, who was working on her first album, Kevin Sharp, one of my dear friends, who we lost a couple years ago. Some of you may recognize his song, Missing You, Nobody Knows It But Me. The Statler Brothers. These people all came and sang on this little song that I wrote, again, a few miles from here, and stood there for 12 hours on this platform for nothing other than to bring awareness to a great cause for foster care and adoption, something I'm very passionate about. In fact, I am a proud foster parent at the moment, something I wasn't expecting. But
you have been, ever since I've known you, though. You've always taken in different foster children.
Yeah, and I happen to have one right now that I wasn't expecting, but when they come, the door opens, and I always learn so much from these kids. And so and that song, we donated that song, and Ray Pronto, again, one of my heroes, played a big role in that project. And
is that the guy that you let use your?
I let him use my jet on occasion. Yeah.
And that song was used by the Dave Thomas Foundation, Wendy's, for adoption, and it became. And you know what? This means more to me than any gold record. Not that I've ever had one, but if I ever did, this would mean more to me than that. That song became the Dave Thomas Foundation's most successful PSA ever. And I've got one of the last autographed pictures that Dave Thomas ever signed, thanking me for that. And and again, as a dad of adopted sons, that right there taught me what the power of music, what the power of the right lyrics with the right melody, how it can, with the right message, can reach ears that would otherwise be void of a message. You know what I mean, Todd?
Absolutely.
Because I got letters from all over the world who said, we never thought about adopting until we heard this song and saw this video. And so for that reason, maybe that would be my favorite. But there are other, there are other songs that mean more for me for different reasons. I had a chance to do a duet with Bonnie Tyler. She sang on one of my songs. For the viewers who don't know, Bonnie Tyler, It's a Heartache, Total Eclipse of the Heart, I Need a Hero, and to have her do a duet with me. And she also recorded one of my songs. So for that reason, that's one of my favorites. You know, I mean, you got to pop. I told my sons, both basketball players, I said, that's like you guys being on the court with Michael Jordan, you know, because she's a pop icon. And to have her sing on one of my songs that I wrote, certainly that's a highlight of my career. And just last year, a guy by the name of John Schneider, who your viewers may know as Bo Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard, wrote to me and said he wanted to record a Christmas song that I literally wrote at the church up here on the hill. I don't know the name of the
St.
church.
Mary's.
Yeah, well, the big one up here on the hill. And so when I heard Bo Duke, who actually, like everyone my age, I grew up watching him. When
Or probably paying more attention to Daisy.
So when he sent me the song of his, him doing my song, and I remember writing that so clearly at that church 20 years ago. Never even, I never dreamed that Bo Duke would be singing that song, and now actually they're looking at putting that in a movie, and so certainly there's different elements of every song that are, that mean something to you.
How can people buy your book?
Well, anywhere that books are sold, I guess, as far as like Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. If you want it signed, it's WayneWarner.com. Those I sign once a week. They bring me a batch of 30 or 40 books, and
I don't have mine's not. Mine's not signed.
Look at that.
Scott's is signed, but mine's not.
I'm very excited that we're about ready. I guess probably this is a little premature to announce, but some people who have been on the Dolly Parton team and the Kenny Rogers team, and so anyway, that PR firm is going to be taking on this book, and I'm very excited about that. So we're wrapping that up now. I'm heading to Nashville in a couple weeks, cool. and so we're ready to get to work on that, and hopefully Todd and I will be having a double ceremony to release our albums here soon.
Yeah, there we go.
Any more?
Not really. I mean, I've known Wayne since my late teens, I guess 18,
right.
Like that, and a lot of this I knew.
Right.
But I still really enjoyed it because a lot of it I didn't. I mean, I learned things I didn't know much about. You talk more in this book about your time at Atlantic Records than I'd ever heard you talk about your time at Atlantic Records in person. So I found that fascinating. But I think it's a great read whether you're familiar with Wayne's music or not. I mean, he talks about, and we didn't actually get a chance to talk about this, but he talks about addiction in this book, which is something that he and I both know very well. You did mention adoption. I mean, a good it's not all just Backstage Nashville, right. Really. I mean, it's kind of Backstage Wayne Warner.
From a writer's perspective, I think you did a very good job at telling your story in a readable form because, as I think I said before,
well, he wrote it exactly how you talk. Right. Like, I read Willie Nelson's biography. It's the same way. Like, Willie wrote that book because that's how he talks.
That was one of the things. There's a certain artist that we talk about in the book, and you got to read the book.
And it's not me.
There's a certain artist that we talk about in the book that made the book So there were some publishers that wanted this book, and they offered some big money for the book, but they wanted me to get into more detail about the artist and more behind the scenes about the artist. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So we turned that down. This was not going to be a tell-all book.
No.
That's not what this was about at all. And so the publisher we did end up going with, I made it clear to them, look, I am not a scholar. I don't want this book to be edited in a way that's not me. I want this book to be written. I want to write it the way I would say it.
Right.
Yep. And you did.
And that's exactly what they let me do. And so that was it would have been a deal breaker otherwise. I wanted it to be genuine.
Right. If your new albums come out at the same time, I think you both ought to come on, and I'll have two celebrities at once again.
Oh, geez.
Okay, thank you for coming on, and thank you for co-hosting.
Hey, I had fun.
Show, because a few weeks ago you hosted my show, and I was your guest.
I did. That's
Oh,
right.
you did?
I talked about his book.
Oh, that's right.
It's
Good.
crazy. It's a crazy time here.
Okay. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.